Hi everyone, I'm Nestor Diaz, the marketing specialist for the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's special discussion. First off, all of us here at PGCMLS would like to acknowledge our partners in the Prince George's County Human Relations Commission and New South Books for making tonight's program possible. Your host tonight will be Kyla Hannington, Public Information Officer and Outreach Coordinator for the Prince George's Human Relations Commission, and our special guest, poet Dr. Jacqueline Allen Trimble, whose first collection of poetry, American Happiness, which is published by New South Books, will be here with us. And her work has also appeared in The Offing, Blue Lake Review, the Louisville Review, and the Griot. Jacqueline is a professor of English and the chairperson of Languages and Literature at Alabama State University, and she is the current board president of the Alabama Writers Forum and a member of the F. Scott Fitzgerald Museum Board. Don't forget, you can borrow a copy of American Happiness from PGCMLS through interlibrary loan, or purchase a copy from our friends at Loyalty Bookstores via tinyurl.com/PGCMLS Loyalty. This program is live, so feel free to comment, share, and like. Thanks again for joining us, and Kyla, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nestor. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Kyla, how you doing?
I'm doing so good. Very happy to see your face again. And I think I should start by giving full disclosure to everybody watching. Jackie was on my thesis committee. And so it's an absolute delight to have you here talking with us today. I was wondering, there's a lot I want to ask you, but would you be willing to start us off by reading a little bit?
Sure. Why don't I read the first poem in this book, since you guys are not in the South. This might be a good place to start. And it's called Everybody in America Hate the South. That land filled to the rafters with ghosts of lynched boys and attics full of souvenirs, dried ears, fingers, genitalia like prunes. Sweet magnolia memory of Miss Scarlett calling to Mammy, who is now grown some dreadlocks and owns the chicken restaurant on the boulevard. America ought to say, thank you, Miss South. Thank you for being like Jesus and taking on the sins of the whole country, or being our crazy Aunt Hazel who runs naked to a house full of company shouting all the foolish things we think but can't say, so we can walk around all post-racial and watch Gone with the Wind over and over, swooning from the romance.
I love it. Thank you so much. Every poem in this collection, I know I've said this to you a million times, but for people who are watching who haven't heard me say it a million times, every poem in the collection just hit me in so many ways. And so, you cover so much. You talk about race, you talk about gender, you talk about injustice. You talk about family. It's just all there. And I guess my opening question is, going back to the opening of your book, you talk about your mom. Can you tell us about how you came in to write this way and how your mom influenced you?
So my mother was a person with a very sardonic wit. She had a wicked sense of humor. And I think I inherited her sense of humor from her. And so that even when I look at things that are very serious and very troubling, my way of coping, I guess, is with a sort of wry look at the world, a kind of sardonic look at the world. I love irony and I love juxtaposition, and that's kind of who she was as a person. She was very much a civil rights activist, and before I was born, she had a cross burned on the front lawn, and her response to it was, well, can I keep it? Can I keep it? And so that's kind of how she lived her life. And so I think she passed that on to me, this desire for social justice, this kind of really wry sense of humor, in this way of looking at the world through a sort of askance gaze. And I guess that's what I do. I think in my poetry that I give everything kind of the side eye. You know, I just want to explore and, you know, find the irony in it and find the sort of weirdness of life, because I think life is just very strange, you know, illogical, weird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved. I mean, can I make requests?
Yes,
Of
of
poems
course.
for you to read? Okay, because I have a list. I won't make you do them all at once, but one of them is the Win Dixie poem, which is not
Oh,
not
yeah.
its official name. It's not the official name. Can you read that to us?
Sure,
It's a
sure.
bit long. Do you mind the length? Is that okay?
No, it was a fun poem, and I'll tell you a little bit about that poem. So I wrote that poem. I went to a poetry workshop in Cape Cod with Marge Piercy, and we were sort of writing a poem every day. And she challenged us to go home and write a poem. And I have a really good friend, Jennifer, who is Canadian, by the way. She's one of my best friends. She's from Sault Ste. Marie, the Sioux, right? And so I think I asked her, I said, you know, how different is the Sioux from Alabama? And she says, it's not. It's not. And so that's kind of the joke. And so we were both academics. We both were kind of on the mommy track, having children, trying to be academics. And one day I said to her, I bet Jean-Paul Sartre never asked Simone de Beauvoir to go to the Win Dixie, because it seemed like we spent all of our time. For those of you who don't know, Win Dixie is a grocery store, a very popular grocery chain in the South. And so that's where this poem came from. Did Jean-Paul Sartre ever ask Simone de Beauvoir to go to the Win Dixie? You can bleed in a war and earn a medal. I can bleed in a war and earn a medal. And I can bleed for 3, 5, 8 days every month for 40 years and live. You can pee standing up. I can pee standing up. And frequently do, squatting over a suspect toilet after waiting in the women's room line, the pee speeding out of me like water from a blocked hose, running down my thighs. I grab for tissue that is not there, or scoop urine frantically back up my leg, a wayward stream already puddling in my shoe, clean myself in the floor in 3 minutes or less with a napkin from Burger King dug in my purse, and walk out of the stall composed and unstained like a lady. You can throw a basketball through a hoop. I can throw a basketball through a hoop and ensure the survival of the species by incubating a basketball-sized human being in my uterus for almost 10 months, my tits filling exponentially with milk, water balloons ready for the sweet hurl of release, my bladder squished by the weight of procreation, hemorrhoids hanging out of my ever-expanding ass, yet craving Taco Bell barely beef burritos, which I will eat and puke up in the parking lot before going home and being repulsed by the smell of the Irish Spring soap you insist on bathing with, even though I have asked you repeatedly to stop creating smells, and puke again while I cook chicken casserole between trips to the John until the moment the hand of God squeezing my gut and I go down on my knees, on my back, squatting in a field, water, jello, and pass one of you through a 10-centimeter canal of softened hip bones, out my grateful vagina, and live. You can run a corporation or a country. I can run a corporation or a country. And lead a brownie troop on an expedition through the woods where I will get Lyme disease and have to take strong antibiotics, which make me nauseous and miserable, but not enough to stop me from chairing the PTA clothing swap, raising $10,000 for a gym floor before doing the grocery shopping at the Win Dixie, where my obsessive coupon clipping saves us $7,000. so I can afford to get my hair done in a mani-pedi after I have cooked the children's dinner and found them an appropriate babysitter to look beautiful enough to impress your coworkers at the party I will attend, smiling gracefully between trips to the bathroom to pump milk for the baby from the antibiotic as well as I can, navigating a tight dress and undergarments, then emerge in the stall like a lady.
Yay. It's so wonderful. I just thank you so much. I absolutely love that poem. And every one of them are so good. And I guess so I'm gonna right. And it's just so like every line I'm like laughing and relating and cheering. It's so good. One of the things when you and I first met, and I'm going to tell the story just for those people watching.
Okay.
We met back in 2017, and I was brand new to an MFA program, and I was 4 years younger than I'm doing math quickly. I was 43 years old, and I had not published a collection, and which, by the way, still have not. And when I met Jackie, I said, like, I don't think I'd read a couple of your poems, but the program really hadn't started, and we just met at a party at someone's house. And what I remember, I just remember you were so encouraging to me and your husband. You were like, both of you were just so warm and encouraging. And I was hoping you could take a moment and just tell your story as a writer, and for people listening to know a little bit about you and your journey, because it's a wonderful, encouraging story in and of itself.
So I started out with the idea that I was going to be a poet, and I majored in English thinking I was going to be a writer. And I went off to graduate school at University of Missouri, studied with Garrett Hongo, and my mother died. And I came home, just sort of almost had a nervous breakdown because I was very young, and just my mother was the center of my whole world. And so I got a job at a local university teaching in a writing center. And I did that, taught developmental English and taught in a writing center for 7 years, and just really gave up the idea that I would ever be a poet. This was going to be my life, whatever. And my dean and my chairperson encouraged me to go back to school, but they said, well, if you're gonna stay here, if you want to stay in academia, you need to get a PhD, not an MFA. And so that was really kind of the nail in the coffin for me, that that was just it. I was going to, because I needed to work, I needed to make a living. By then I had, I was married, I had 2 children. And so I thought those were the dreams of my youth. Mm-hmm. And so I went off and I got a PhD, and, I came back and I taught, and I was honors director, and everything was fine. And my husband said to me, after I had worked at 2 different institutions and I had been tenured and I had climbed the kind of, little promotion ladder, my husband said to me, and I was 50 years old. So it was funny to me when you said, I'm 43 and I haven't, because my husband said to me, he says, you're not happy. Mm. And I said to him, what are you talking about? I'm happy. Like, what, blah, well, whatever, right? By then we had 3 children and whatever. He said, no, you're not writing. And I'm like, I'm not writing? He said, writers write. And you're a writer, but you can't be a writer if you don't write. And I was just like, what is he talking about? It kind of upset me a little, but I said, ugh. And so that's when I applied to go to the Marge Piercy. And I thought a colleague had encouraged me, and I thought, I'll never get in. But I did get in. And she requires that you write like 15 poems once you get in. And I had not written a poem in a very long time. And I started writing again. And I thought, God, can I still do this? I'm not that young poet anymore. Can I still do this? And I could. And so I started like a whole new career. after I was 50. And when my first collection came out, I was 55 years old, you know? And so
Is
I
that,
was 55
is this it?
years old.
This is it, right? This is the first one, right?
This is the first one. This
And
is the
it is
first one.
so for those of you watching, like this is okay. Everybody who knows me personally and knew me personally at Christmas time 2017 got this book because it was like the greatest book I'd ever read. I'm just, you know, for me, this is so. I want you to continue, but for those listening, hear this.
Yeah.
So she's 55 and writes this like blockbuster knockout collection of poetry. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, continue. So this comes out.
And even the way the book got written, I had just started writing again, and I had no ambition because I really still thought, oh, it's done. You know, people out there who are getting books and writing and doing all that stuff are, you know, they're children to me, you know. And I did this thing in my hometown called 24 Hours of Poetry. New South Books had sponsored it in connection with the Alabama Book Festival. And so what they did was they had these venues around town, and you could sign up to read at any time during this 24-hour period. Could be 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And so I signed up to the last read of the day, and it happened to be in the bookstore owned by this publisher. And I just got up and I read my poems. Boom, that was it. And afterwards, the publisher came up to me and he said, I want to publish your collection. And I said, what? I said, I don't have a collection. He said, well, you need to write one. And he called his managing editor over and they said, well, send us your poems. And I did. And they're like, yeah. And they gave me a book contract, which was crazy. And I wrote the poems. I mean, like, that does not happen. And I thought, well, God, maybe you can be a writer. And so then this collection came out, and then it won a little prize, and then it won another prize. And I was like, what is happening? And I just started going to more of these workshops, and I started writing more just sort of with intensity. And I realized that I've never been happier in my life. And I realized that it's never too late to follow your dreams. And this year I won a National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellow. And I'm 60 years old. You know, I'm 60 years old, and I'm like, okay, well, and my second book is due in the publishers by August 15th, and it's coming.
That was my next. Okay, that was my next question because I've been waiting. Okay, so it's going to come out in the fall, or when are we talking?
I think it's coming. They haven't given me a publication date. I know it's coming out in 2022, and I know the final manuscript is due in August, but they haven't given me the exact publication date. But I'm really excited. It's called How to Survive the Apocalypse. And yes, I started writing it before the pandemic.
It's very timely. It's very timely. Okay.
It was like, what? I don't know. Maybe I'm psychic or something. But I'm like, you know, this is really happening. This is really happening. And so I encourage anybody, like, you know, my husband once asked Alice Walker, we went to a reading and he stood up in the audience, and my husband says things like, my wife is a writer like you. And I'm like, oh God, no, I'm not, but okay.
No, I love your husband. Okay.
And he said, so what can I do to help her with her writing? And Alice Walker said, she took it as a serious question. She said, do the dishes. You know, this idea of getting the people around you to give you time and space to write. And so I've been really lucky, really blessed for people to kind of get it and to understand. And my children are grown, you know, and so it's like, now is my time. And apparently that's fine. You know, it's okay that I'm not 20 and will never be 20 again. And thank God for that. But it's okay. You know, it's okay. Well, that's the good thing about also being a writer. You just have more stuff to talk about when you get to be 60, right?
Well, I'm excited for the new collection. Like, I mean, I love this one so much. And one of the things, so we're the Human Relations Commission, and for those of you who are watching, maybe not from Prince George's County or are from Prince George's County and aren't familiar with that term, it's what is called the Office of Human Rights. And in fact, we're rebranding, and very soon that will be our title. So our focus is human rights, and it's about building understanding, investigating complaints of discrimination, and really, which to me, your collection is all about human rights. It's all about the fight for equity, and I mean, it's just completely on point. And I was wondering if you would be willing to read another poem for us, which is How to Survive as a Black Woman in America, including the Deep South.
Yeah, sure. That's one of my favorite poems because that was a revenge poem. I'm this huge Toni Morrison fan, just sort of a crazy Toni Morrison fan. And I went to see her. My husband got me a ticket, and you could go to this private reception and actually meet her. And I was standing in line to meet her, and this guy jumped in front of me. I mean, I was like maybe 4 people away, and he jumps in front of me, and he turns around and says, "You don't mind, do you?" And my first inclination was to shank him, but I did not. And I thought, you don't want Toni Morrison to see you kill this man in front of her. She won't remember anything else but that. And so I just said, no, of course not. And the first little section of this has to do with my 7th grade Latin teacher. And you will get it when you hear it. And I think the rest is explanatory. And it's called How to Survive as a Black Woman Everywhere in America, including the Deep South. When a teacher, sure-footed in her dominion, ignores your raised arm, a single brown cane stalk in the agar of Latin class, when she heaps praise on Caesar and the little blonde Puella who does not know a mo from a moss, while alone in that cane field, you translate as if your life depends on these dead words. Do not protest when fear and hatred show in eyes that look right through you. Do not pick up a field stone to knock teacher's buck-toothed grin down her lily throat. Say nothing, say nothing, say nothing. Smile and put your hand down. Smile and praise the little dumb girl. Smile through every declination of your personhood. Smiling is a lesson you can use. When the man, so certain in his privilege, turns to you in some reception line, inspects you as if you stand on an auction block and not the plush floor of the Renaissance Hotel. When he laughs and says, "I heard you were a Negro graduate student," except in genteel and colorless words. When he questions you again and again, hoping for affirmative action to show its face. Do not yell in righteous indignation of your smarts. Do not ask him some questions of your own. Do not shank him with your butter knife. Say nothing, say nothing, say nothing. Smile and answer his questions nonchalantly. Smile when he says, "You are smart for a Black girl." Smile when he asks you to perform your monkey tricks for his wife, his friend, a passerby. Monkey tricks might come in handy one day. When your brown child goes walking down the street, the hood of his ordinary sweatshirt pulled low about his head, his pockets bulging with Skittles and tea bottles, do not pretend you are surprised when a man he has never seen accosts him for thinking sidewalks are free for all. When they bring his limp brown body to your door and tell you how he brought it on himself, was much, much too uppity to live. When they praise the one who stood his ground and shot him dead. Do not scream and cry and cuss. Do not pick up your weapon and kill his killer. Do not blame the jurors for being blind. Say nothing, say nothing, say nothing. Smile and bury your only son. Smile and calm the crazy crowd. Smile and forgive, forgive, forgive. Forgiveness covers centuries of sin. When they knock at last at your own front door, get up, sure-footed on the bed you have made. Get your children and your husband up too. Do not stomp your feet in protest. Do not wave the cane stalk of your arm in protest. Do not explain that you are worthy and smart. Do not say you have sacrificed enough. Go quietly into the trucks. Go quietly into the long train cars. Go quietly into the dark ovens like the coward you are.
That that is a powerful, powerful poem.
Thank you. Thank you.
It just gives me chills. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you.
So that poem, and as I said before, the collection is about, it is about human rights. It is about equity. It is about this cry for equity. And I wonder, as you sit to write, is there a deliberate intention in those? Like, do you sit down to plan that, or is that what comes out?
So I think that's what comes out. I mean, that's what I see in the world. I think that that's my my mission. That's my interest. I'm interested in ameliorating the suffering of others. And I have this really intense sense of justice. I get very upset about injustice in all kinds of ways. And I think that we do not have a just society, and we should, and we could, because when there is literally justice for all, everybody benefits. And I think that's what a lot of people don't get, that everybody benefits from a just America, a just system. And so how to survive apocalypse even goes sort of further into that, because a lot of what I write about and respond to comes right out of the newspaper, off the news. I mean, that poem, the center of that poem was really the Trayvon Martin killing. And, I respond to that because I think that somebody has to help rearrange people's perspective, to say, and I think I try to do it sometimes with humor, because there's humor at the beginning of that poem and then it gets less and less so. Mm-hmm. But I think that people can get drawn in, and maybe they can see themselves in the lives of others that they may not align themselves with, or they may ignore, or they may think, well, that doesn't have anything to do with me. And so I do make a conscious effort to do that. And I think it's just kind of the way I see the world.
Right. It's really great. I have a whole list of things, but I feel like we shouldn't spend like the whole hour having you read poems, although we could. But so you have this new collection coming out, which I'm very excited about. Would you have other projects going on, or something new that you're working on you'd like to tell us about?
Sure. So I just finished I reached out to a filmmaker who made a short movie about interpreting one of my poems, which I thought was really, really cool. I was so out of my mind. And there's, I had been writing this series of poems for the book, and they were all about social justice, and they were so dark, and they were just so intense. And I woke up one morning and I said, I cannot write these poems today. I can't write these poems today, and so I wrote this poem called The Language of Joy, which was loosely based on a story my mother told me one time. And it's a poem that's, even though there's some nods to social justice in it, because I don't think I can ever stop that, but it's a poem. It's a poem about joy, not about happiness, but about joy, and joy in the face of obstacles. And so she sort of made this really, there's dancing in the poem. And so there's dancing in the video, and it's all of these great things. And it's about being just, tenacious in the world. And so I was really excited about that. I also started working on a novel that I'm really excited about. So I'm trying to finish my poetry collection so that I can finish my novel. It's a novel about different perspectives. I'll just put it that way. One of the main characters considers himself a community developer. Other people in the book consider him a gentrifier. And so
Okay.
and then there's kind of a Greek chorus in the book that's a social media where people get on and talk about stuff. And so some of the chapters are actually people kind of on social media talking about what happened, which is for me the Greek chorus of our time. And so I'm really excited about that project. And then another project I'm working on is I did in 2019, I wrote 5 episodes for a South African soap opera. I know that seems like what? But I loved it. I loved it. And so now I'm working on a few things to write for television, thinking about how I want to do that. And so, I think genre is nice, but I think when you can, I don't think we have to be wed to genre. I think if you're a writer, you can write anything. You can write anything. And so I think you should. I think you should be a person of letters.
So I have many questions about what you've just said. So,
Okay.
so let's go back to the filmmaker and the poem. So
Yes.
because I have two questions. Number one is the film finished? And if so, is there a place online that people who are watching today can watch it?
So they just shot it a week ago. And it has just gone. This just happened, and it has just gone to the editor. There's original music, there's choreography, there's all kind of stuff going on in it. And so it's gone to the editor. So it should be ready probably in a month or so, because the editing process is a long, painful process, I'm told. And it's very short. It's about 5 minutes or so. And I think the director is going to send it out to film festivals as a short.
Oh, cool.
So I will keep you posted about when. But it's going to have a premiere, we hope, on the city of Montgomery, because it features a main, very important street in Montgomery. And I think it's going to actually premiere on maybe the city of Montgomery website before it goes off to the film festivals. So I will let you know when the premiere.
Definitely. We will spread that far and wide, because that would be wonderful to watch. And would you like to read the poem to us tonight, or is that something you want to keep closed until the film?
No. I read this poem. It's a fun poem, and so I kind of like reading it. And it's called The Language of Joy. Language of Joy. Black woman joy is like this. Mama said one day long before I was born, she was walking down the street, foxes around her neck, their little heads smiling up at her and out at the world, and she was wearing this suit she had saved up a month's paycheck for after it called to her so seductively from the window of this boutique. And that suit was wearing her, keeping all its promises in all the right places. Indigo, matching gloves, suede shoes, dippity-doo-dah in blue, with tassels, honey gold, and Lord, a hat with plume de peacock, a conductor's baton that bounced to hip rhythm. She looked so fine, she thought Louis Armstrong might pop up out of those movies she saw as a child, wipe his forehead and sing, ba-da-de-bop-o-do-de-do-de-do-do. And he did. Mama did not sing, but she giggled that day. And she grinned, and she was the star of her own Hollywood musical. Here with Satchmo, who had called Ella over, and now they were all singing and dancing like a free people up Dexter Avenue. And don't think they didn't know they were walking in the footsteps of slaves and over auction sites and past where old Wallace had held on to segregation like a life raft. But this was not that day. This day was for foxes and hip rhythm and musical perfection, and folks on the street joining in the celebration of breath and holiness. And they did too. And color coordinated ensembles, they kicked and turned and grinned and shouted like church or football game, whatever their religious preference. The air vibrated with music, arms, legs, and years of unrequited sunshine. Somebody did a flip up Dexter Avenue. It must have been a Nicholas brother in a featured performance. And Mama was Miss Lena Horne, Dorothy Dandridge, high-stepping up the real estate, ready for her close-up. That's when Mama felt this little tickle. She thought it might be pent-up joy, until a mouse squirmed out from underneath that fine collar, over that fabulous fur, jumped off her shoulder, and ran down the street. Left my mama standing there on Dexter Avenue in her blue suit and dead foxes. And what did Mama do? Everybody looking at her, robbed by embarrassment. She said, "It bees like that sometimes." Then she and Satchmo, Ella, and the whole crew jammed their way home.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So exciting. Please do let us know when the film, because I can, as you're reading it, I can imagine like those scenes were so vivid. So you said, when you were talking about how you came to writing, one of the things, you talked about your education. You've been a professor, tenured professor. And I was wondering if we could take a moment to talk about what it is like as a woman in academia. You're a doctor, and I know that I have friends sometimes who experience well, I think you probably know. Let me ask you. You tell me how that is, and if you have any tips for people doing the same.
Yeah. So one of the tips is think about your career in terms of a longer arc sometimes, particularly if you decide to marry or you decide to have children, where you're going to have things that are dividing your attention. And I hate to say it, still in 2021, male academics, even the most enlightened of them, do not have the childcare duties or interruptions that women professors do even now. And a lot of women professors that I know who have been highly successful have been so because they have given up personal relationships, they have given up having children, they have given up parts of their life that men still don't really have to give up. And I know that sounds ridiculous to say during this period of time, but it's true. The road to tenure is very interesting, and so my advice always is to get your faculty manual at your or your promotion and tenure manual at your school and read it 10 times. Know every single thing about it. Know every single requirement of it. Find yourself a good mentor. A good mentor is worth his or her weight in gold, and listen to his or her advice. Listen to their advice, because you need an advocate to help you navigate tenure and promotion. It is about production, it's about teaching, but it's also about getting on the right committees, being chair of those committees. It's also about navigating the often minefields of politics at your institutions that as a young faculty member, you may not be at all aware of. And you need a mentor who's been through it, who can help you navigate it, and who can also help you sidestep minefields and pitfalls. This is a thing that you cannot do by yourself. There are some consortiums, there are some organizations of women who mentor other women academics in the academy. Join one. I cannot tell you what how necessary it is. And it's institutions, they're not going to tenure everybody, and they're not going to promote everybody. And the higher up you go, the more difficult it becomes. And so you really need to educate yourself, and you really need to make sure that whatever you are doing, your production, whatever, is on point. The other thing that I'm going to say that a lot of people won't tell you is that women often get a lot of extra duty, like committee work. Like they get put on sometimes low-level committees where they have to do a lot of work that interferes with your scholarly production. And you think, well, I've done all this work for the university. I've been advisor to this group, and I've, sponsored the debate team, and I've done this, and you've got a long list of things that you have done. And then when it comes time to do get tenure and promotion, you have not produced, and you will not get tenure. And women tend to get overloaded. I mean, it's a thing.
It's a lot.
It's a thing, and so you have to be very careful, and you just have to be very diplomatic and think about your career rather sometimes than, you have to balance being a good academic citizen, but also your career. And you need a mentor to sort of give you the inside scoop on some things.
I think mentorship just across jobs and across and female mentorship is so critical. So critical. It's life-changing. And it would be nice. Go ahead.
No. I'm just saying, I had some amazing female mentors who took me under their wing, and would tell me the truth about, okay, people gonna say one thing, but really it's this. And you can't beat it. You cannot beat it.
Yeah. It is, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, our work and the sort of the work that we've been talking, I think collectively in this country over the last year, and talking about systems and how systems, how can we sort of dismantle systems that are oppressive and difficult, and sort of as you're describing the pitfalls, and the challenges and the inequity, it seems like that's a great, it seems easy from the outside to be like, okay, well, how can the institutions, if it's not working, how do we disrupt that narrative in those institutions? Right. In a useful way,
And part of the problem is it's not working for those individuals of us who fall into quote unquote certain categories,
right?
But it's working for the institution. And that's part of the reason, because the institution is not always motivated to change things. They are motivated to give lip service to change and to create, women's centers and diversity, et cetera, so that they have checked those boxes. But they're not always committed, and this is just the truth, they're not always committed to doing the kind of work that's really necessary to make long-standing change, because it is working for them.
That is insightful and not as hopeful, but I think it's good. Yeah. It's truth, and I think that it's good to know what we're up against collectively as we try to equitize things, and whether it's in our own lives or for the lives of others, or both, what that's going to take. I realize my questions are all over the map, but that's because I could just talk to you for like 4 hours, and I'm trying to get it all down to, an hour. So I do want to circle back to the soap opera and ask, how did this happen? Tell me, what happened? Yeah.
So I have a friend who is a showrunner and who did a lot of work in television in South Africa. And we sort of got on the writing tip when he did a play, and I critiqued his play because I wrote my dissertation on a playwright. And so I had a lot to say about avant-garde plays and theater and this kind of stuff he was doing. And he was like, oh my God, yeah, we need to. So we became we were friends, and we became writing friends. And I told him one day, I said, I think I want to learn to write for television. And he said, oh my God, yes. And so he just started giving me these little lessons. And so he got this opportunity to write for this South African soap opera on this streaming platform where you basically do 5 episodes a week of 5 minutes. So that basically each week is an episode, a complete episode. And he said, Jackie, do you want to write for this? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm just a beginner. He said, you can do it. You can do it. And so we had an international writers room where people who were writing for this were everywhere. I mean, they were all over the globe. And we would meet via Zoom or Google Meet, and we would map out the season and blah, 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 blah. And then people were assigned certain weeks to write. And so that's how we did it. And we actually got paid. I got an IMDb credit. It was like, okay, cool. Yeah. And it was so much fun. And then they aired it. And so, and they translated it into Afrikaans. So it was really great because most of the people writing for it were women of color. And it was the first time a group of women of color had written an Afrikaans soap opera. And so it was really interesting. And I told him, I said, I don't know anything about South Africa. He said, good, don't worry about it. Just write it.
That's awesome. And you said you're working now, you're trying to do more stuff with TV, or you have something on the go?
So yeah, I'm trying to develop scripts, a series, all kinds of stuff. Really interested in doing that. Learning more every day, practicing, writing scripts, watching, sort of deconstructing television shows to figure out what it is I want to do. And my husband came up with a brilliant idea for one. And so that's something we want to work on. So really very excited about that.
And do you have a place, so when you write a TV show, does it go
Yeah.
Do you write it and then you send it out to Netflix, or how does it work in terms of the process?
So you create a concept, and you can create like a pilot, and you create what's called something like a television Bible, where these are characters, here's the arc of the show, here's what the show is about, and then you have to pitch it to you have to get a meeting and to whoever you want to pitch it to. Okay. There was one that we kind of collaborated on, and Alex and the director went and pitched it, and the people said, this is weird. This is too weird. They didn't
so weird in a bad way, I guess. Okay.
Well, they thought it was, yeah. Well, television is one of those things that you have to have seen it in order to buy it. You have to have seen it. So it's like, is it like this show, this show, this show? And so if it's like nothing else, it's harder to sell. But once it's like something else, like, everybody's has been trying to recreate ER now, or everybody's trying to recreate, something else, or, everybody's trying to do the Stranger Things or this, that, and the other. Because once somebody can break through with whatever weird thing they've come up with, then, then it's all good. But You can't be, it's like, do I want to invest $20 million in this weird idea? No.
Well, they need to be convincing that there's an audience, I guess.
There's an audience.
Speaking of audience, I'm a little bit late here in saying that anybody watching, if you have any questions for Jackie, please type them into the chat of wherever you're watching, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Our friend Nestor, who is working for the library behind the scenes, will make sure that we get them, and we'll try to address them before we run out of time. So please type away if you have any questions. So I have another question, and it goes back to when we're talking about mentorship and support.
Yeah.
One of the things that I know, and I feel like I'm going to mispronounce it, but I know that you're part of Cave Canem or Canem.
Cave Canem.
See, I was really wrong. I was so wrong. So tell us about what that is, though. So
Cave Canem. Cave Canem is an organization founded by Toy Derricotte and Cornelius Eady. And it was designed to be a place for Black poetry, to promote Black poets, because it was very difficult for Black poets to get editorships, to get to win prizes, to get into certain kinds of venues or certain kinds of workshops. And so they saw a need, and they created this organization, Cave Canem. And now it's been going strong over 20 years. And if you start looking at the Pulitzer Prize winners or the any prize winners, you're going to see a long list of Cave Canem folks who have come out of Cave Canem. And they were very intentional about that, because one of the things that we don't realize is that there are editors who decide who gets published, editors. And for a long time, those editors did not look like, people of color. They didn't look like women. They didn't look like LGBTQ people. They didn't look like, they were of a very particular type, educated in a very small group of, colleges, and it was almost like you could not break through that gate, because your work would not be the kind of work that would appeal to them. And so Cave Canem and a few other organizations set out to change that. And so it's that people sitting in those editors' chairs, people sitting in those readers' chairs need to be the one to say, you know what, there are readers out here who would respond to this. There are readers out here who would, find companionship or find like-mindedness with this. You can't assume that this is just your readership. And so, and they did. They changed the entire face of American poetry. It's kind of extraordinary.
So how did it work? It's still work. Like, it's a collective. It's mentorship.
Yeah.
Like,
So what happens is you apply to Cave Canem, you send a manuscript, and they do not look at your CV. They look, or they don't care where you've been published or if you've been published. You send a manuscript, they read the manuscript, and they choose fellows based on the manuscript. So once you become a fellow, once you're selected for a fellow, they invite you to come to Cave Canem. It's held in Pennsylvania. It's in Pennsylvania, and they have a retreat. It's a retreat, and some of the greatest poets of our time are there at that retreat. And you go, and you have 5 years to come back 3 different times. You go through workshop. And every day there's a different workshop. So the mantra at Cave Canem is 10 by 10 in the bin. They have these bins. You're in a group. Let's say I'm in group B. And so I put my poems, 10 copies of my poems in bin B. And the professor, your professors rotate around. So my professor comes and gets those poems. And you workshop that poem that day. So in the morning, you may have craft talks, and in the afternoon, you have workshop, and you meet all these great editors. The people who are probably in your classes are editors. One of my classmates, the first year I was there, approached me and said, I want to publish your poem in, the magazine that she was editing for at the time. They also give you opportunities. For example, there'll be a Cave Canem slot at Sewanee. There'll be a Cave Canem slot at Squaw Valley. They invited me. They chose me as one of the fellows to do a reading at the New School in New York, Cave Canem Presents. And then they had Tim Sebold and Sophia Sinclair. So Tim Sebold is a very well-known established poet. Then they had Sophia Sinclair, who had just published a book and had just gotten a great book deal. And then they had me. I'm the kind of little low fellow on the totem pole, but they pair you with them. And so you read with them so that your work can be seen by a wider audience. Mm-hmm. And so they have all these different ways of mentoring you, encouraging your work, getting your work seen by editors, getting your work seen by an audience, and helping you develop your career.
So, and this goes back, it really does circle back to mentorship and like how, like lifting other people up, reaching sideways or, and just bringing people along with you whatever your function is. We're talking about writing, we've talked about academia, but I think that's true in all of our lives and professions that we have such, it's really empowering, right? How much change we can impact just by being kind to somebody else and helping, supporting them and lifting them up.
And I think it's so important. And I think that this is something you should always do. And, you should always encourage, you always put opportunity if you can. You should always not just invite, famous people to your campus. As I had the wonderful experience with Kendall at the W, who, came to a reading and invited me to read at the
Wealthy.
Oh my God, the Eudora Wealthy.
Oh, God. Yeah. So the W, for those watching, the W is Mississippi University for Women. Where we met. We're at the Wealthy Symposium.
Yes.
And that was awesome.
Symposium. And so it was great. And so he had like really famous writers and not so famous writers. And so it was just really a delightful mix, and it's lovely. But what Kendall has done is just an enormous mentorship, bringing writers together with readers and bringing writers together with each other. And I think that program, everybody who's there, every writer I know who's ever been to that says how well you're treated and how it's just the best system ever. And I think they're right. They're right.
So hear that, Mississippi University for Women. You're getting the shout out right now. Wealthy Symposium. Yes. It's in October, everybody. Put it on your calendars.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
We are almost out of time, and I do have to give some very brief closing remarks, but I'm wondering if before we wrap up, would you be willing to read American Happiness just to close us? It's title. This is the title poem from this amazing collection. And then I'm going to move us. Sadly, I have to move us into closing remarks after that.
Yes. Okay. American Happiness. It used to be in Mayberry, folks were never colored, not even black and white, but beige, khaki, a little gray. In Mayberry, Deputy Barney had one bullet and no need for rope. The only burning he did was for his Thelma Lou. The sheriff had no gun, just an Aunt Bee baking pies, and an Opie full of freckles heading off to fish or sing or court, whatever Opies do. In Mayberry, no doors were barred or locked. The jail was mostly empty. The only water hose we ever saw lay peacefully curled on Sheriff Andy's lawn. Mayberry was a southern town. Technicolor must have killed it. Made Andy a cranky lawyer, sent Opie running all the way to Hollywood. But we remember black and white, from Chicago to Watts to Selma. We tuned in to connect the dots of Opie's face while we dined on mashed potatoes and buttered corn right before our TV sets. Mesmerized that in this southern town, the sheriff used his hose to water Aunt Bee's roses. We were so happy and relieved. We laughed until we could not think, until we fell off our sofas and wingbacks and cane bottoms. We laughed until we could not see or hear, until we could forget that outside our own windows, other sheriffs with loaded guns, snarling dogs, and ready hoses made quick work of a world on fire.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, we have come very abruptly and way too soon to the end of our conversation with Jacqueline Trimble. Please get her book if you haven't had the chance to read it yet. You can get it from your library or from your favorite independent bookstore, American Happiness. And as you've just heard tonight, there's another collection coming out hopefully early 2022. I'm casting my vote. So make sure you check her out. You can check out her webpage as well, which I think we can get on the screen if we haven't already had it. She's also on Twitter and she has a Facebook page. Yeah. I want to let you know really quickly about some other things we have coming up. I see that we're out of time, so I'm going to go very fast. Tomorrow night, please join us for another New South Books event when we talk to Steve Pfiffer, the co-author of C.T. Vivian's memoir, It's in the Action. That is tomorrow night at 7:00. Please come to that. Yeah, we're very excited. And we have another new stuff. We have Overturning Brown coming up on May 17th, another New South author with Steve Suits. So please join us for that. So it's going to be at 7:00. But you can hear about all of our events by going to tinyurl. Okay, I'm going to skip that one. We'll go to the library. pgcmls.info/events. I can't remember my own events webpage. I'm so sorry. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you to the library system for co-hosting this with us, and to Nestor. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Bye-bye.